So guys, we're jumping in again, another powerful section of content from The Power of One More, Ed Milet, chapter, I believe it was chapter 12. It is indeed about one more habit, the power of habits. And we've all had a lot of that around a lot of our lives. For those of you that have been around me in the coaching space, man, we've talked a lot about habits. And yet there were some unique ways of how to install them and how to clear them out that were in this content. So by all means, as always, the room is yours. Carrie, I see your mic's hot.
Yeah, before we start, I wanted to talk to Ryan for a second. So yesterday, while I'm driving around in the world, I was thinking about your dilemma there. And so I was curious, do your team members, do they get access to this group? Like,
Yeah,
they do, because I was wondering, I'm like, maybe they need to like just get like go to the recordings or something so that you're all learning it at the same time, and then maybe they would, be in it as much as you are. That's my 2 cents.
It's me. It's not my team. It's me.
And
Okay.
that is what is called accountability, everybody. And we will get definitely into one more accountability, because no matter what happens with everybody else, Ryan's got the vision that it's him. So adjusting those habits. By the way, Ryan, every member of your team has the opportunity to be here at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, right?
Right.
Who doesn't have access to this room?
Nobody on my team. Everybody has it.
Well, you said it first correctly. Nobody. This room is broker agnostic, team agnostic, industry agnostic. Everybody is invited.
Hey, we could make it a standard.
What a concept. Making showing up and building yourself a standard. I love that. Going back to some of the old content. By the way, what's interesting is the standards, if you really institute them, become the habits. All of these pieces tie together. So, Ryan, your mic was hot. Jeanette, after that, what do you have to add from the content as well, my friend?
So page 155, getting fired up about living your life well each day is important, but nowhere is near as important as having good habits. It says the biggest separator in life is not motivation or inspiration. It's the habits that you create to get you through those days when you don't feel like you need to do to be successful. Like, to me, this screams discipline. Like, motivation comes and goes, inspiration wanes, but discipline, if you have the discipline, those habits become what you are, your standards. And to me, that's very powerful.
Yeah, it really is the discipline to stick to something until all of a sudden it becomes a habit and the discipline is no longer necessary. I mean, great example for me is reading. I never, in my 40 plus years here, I won't actually be totally straightforward about how many years. I never had the habit of reading. It was never a part of my life. Yeah, you'd read because you were required to for whatever education you went through. And for the average American post-education, they actually never read a book cover to cover again. And I was in that world. Talked a lot about it decades ago. It never actually did it. Now, because of this room and having the standard of showing up every day, which then required the discipline to read and be prepared for the room every day, habit that I read every day. So interesting in here, by the way, you guys, the trigger for me as we're looking at the material was being here with you. Knowing in my mind, I've got to show up for you is the trigger, which gets me to read, which gives me the dopamine hit of having spent the 30 minutes with you guys. Every morning is a dopamine hit. Jeanette, what do you got?
Well, actually, I had a lot of the same thing that we talked about. And I'd like to recommend another book that we go through again this year would be Atomic Habits.
Awesome.
that was a hugely impactful book. And just how to build a habit was important. And show me your habits and I'll show you your life. But also the understanding that the brain's DNA is hardwired to protect you by conserving mental energy whenever it can, so that you can apply it to other parts of your life. So you get into these habits, then you're free to, and we know that we've talked about this for the last year. It's like you do these patterns so that, and you're watching and you're improving on it. But then as you improve these habits, you're free to think about the next things, the next levels. And that's what the growth is for each and every one of us in our own places. So the brain can change and adapt on page 157 as a result of experience, known as plasticity and neuroplasticity. And, and we then create our own triggers. We find out the triggers that stopped us from doing our habits, and therefore we can choose new responses to those triggers. That's been life-changing. It's just been life-changing to choose new responses and to figure out where the ones I didn't want were and why.
It's so interesting for me that we can apply a quote judgment free to our habits. We have these labels historically of good habits and bad habits, and that creates so much emotion around them. I would love for us to take the judgment, as Jeanette's bringing in here, of habits that serve us and habits that don't. You picked up the habits previously and maybe they served you in that window of time. Are they serving you now? If not, paying attention, like you say, take an inventory, Jeanette, of things maybe you need to clean up and get no longer serving you and get them out of your life. And of course, taking inventory of the ones that are going to allow you to achieve your goals, or the habits that will help you install your standards. By all means, both of those matter. Thank you, Jeanette. Andres, I see, and then Mark, you're up next, brother.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Jeanette and you just said, Coach. I came from the supply and logistics field, worked there for 12 years. I was good at it, committed to it, always give it 100%. But plugging into this group, coming into this industry, realized that I do not have the discipline nor the habits that I need to get to the level I need to be successful. So all of that for me is completely being a transformation, slowly but surely. It's been eye-opening, realizing that I am nowhere near where I need to be in order to get to where I want.
And you're going to do it a step at a time, as Ryan brought in, with the discipline to stay on it every single day. That's how the habit gets formed. Mark, you're up, brother.
I went and saw Linda McKissick speak one time. And for those of you who don't know who Linda McKissick is, she's a really big agent with Keller Williams. And she told a story about how Gary Keller would invite an agent into his office to shadow him for 4 or 5 hours. And the rules were that you were not allowed to ask any questions. You just sat there and watched. And then afterwards, you could ask your questions. And she went on to say that this happened like 4 times in a year. And she was telling how much she learned during that experience. And then Gary Keller told her at the end of her 4th time being there, you think it's about you. It's not, it's about me, because when I have somebody of your caliber sitting next to me, I'm going to step my game up, and I'm going to make sure that when I'm doing what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to do it at a level that's better than what I have done in the past. And once again, that goes back to this group and the discipline that we tell ourselves. And the discipline may even start last night at going to bed at 9 o'clock, knowing I'm going to get up, I'm going to journal, I'm going to write my goals down, I'm going to say my affirmations. And oh, by the way, the new standard is I am not going to miss this 10 o'clock mastermind because it's so important to me in my business. And we hold each other accountable through that. And as we get to know each other more, when we say something, we have the right to not necessarily call each other out in a negative way, but in a positive way, in a positive form. And that's really important for all of us to have that. And I would argue and say there's nobody in this industry that has this right now to this level. I mean, I've been in the business 25 years, and to have live accountability and a live coach on a daily basis and studying something this powerful, it doesn't exist.
Well, thank you for that, Mark. Thank you for just continuing to show up, because that's where I get my energy, seeing you guys and having you. Think about this a minute. We've had 35 people in this room before, and I just put my readers on to read. We have 18 that are here committed. And it seems every book we get a rush early on, and then as we get in the content and it starts challenging your thinking, people start dropping off. So make sure you're also giving yourselves a pat on the back that you are here and you are showing up and you are doing the work, because gosh darn it, that's how you're going to accelerate your life. Caesar and then Jeanette.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach. I wanted to tap in on another thing that, or add something that Mark just mentioned, is having that person watch you that makes you up your game. And it ties into what we spoke about yesterday about the watching the silent movie. And it's almost like you're watching yourself, right? Because like, okay, what am I doing right now? And I love that tying into that, because it's like when you realize, when you're like looking at yourself, you see it differently. So it's a great thing. The second thing I wanted to add regarding on the book was on page 157. Brains can change and adapt as a result of experience. This is known as brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. So that was like an important thing as well, as like, and I want to tie it to Andres as well, where he says, you know, this experience is literally changing his brain and how he's like seeing the world and how he's adapting and wanting to reach that higher level. And he knows there's levels to this, and he's constantly here. I see him, and that's constantly changing his brain and adapting to this new environment and understanding what it takes to reach these other levels. So I just wanted to bring those two things into the group.
And with that neuroplasticity piece, Caesar, I absolutely want the group to see it through both lenses, so you understand how fast you can actually do this. Through intensity, through short-term focus, you can get that automatic response built in. The level of intensity, positive or negative, shortens the time it takes for it to stick. And I'll give you a great example. Anyone who has had a significant traumatic event, PTSD is just a rewiring of the brain with trigger response that now shows up in lots of other places in someone's life because of one significant, intense traumatic event. So you guys can actually create the same thing with one significant successful event and leaning into it, making it bigger than it is, creating in your mind that it's bigger than it is. And gosh darn it, this is going against a lot of the historical training you've had on the positive side. I'm going to say it ties into the prize part of the content that I'm going to let someone else initially bring in. And yet, guys, you have this power. All of you do, to get into positive environments, positive habits, like you're doing here, even more intense than we're doing here, and cranking up. I'll add this just to do it. We're going to do a 2-day event starting next Wednesday in Dallas. I really need to know who's going to be there. You guys need to notify me, text me, make sure you're signed up through the link on russcalio.com so I can make sure that I've got the materials for you. I got to put in some orders for some stuff. And this is the beta that we're doing going into Dallas. We may be rolling this intense mastermind environment out in Chicago, in Colorado. I'm open to the possibilities. That being said, let's get back to the content. I've got Jeanette, I've got Ann, I've got Celeste, and then Carrie.
from the earlier, from the part of that, when the stress hits, we go into habit and we don't have the right habits in place, we sink into depression, despair, and fear. So every one of us is going through that because we're thinking, we're just, how are we going to ever get good enough for what we're wanting to do? And Andres, you talked about a health issue this morning, and when we're in a fear, those kind of health issues come up. I'm sorry, I just was thinking about that. It says chronic anxiety, heart disease, sleep problems, weight gain, digestive problems, all of those. So I appreciate the next part when we're talking trigger, action, prize. So we're figuring new triggers in this for ourselves. We're recognizing a place where that is a problem, where it triggered it, where the fear, and fear. So what's the truth of it? If that's a fear and it's making me sick in some ways, what first off, I can stop judging myself in a negative way. I can now start going, okay, what is the truth here? And then I can bring in the life of the truth and break that place. And I see that's what Russ is talking about. What do? You build, when you need to build a new habit, you do that. You first thing, build a new trigger. And so on page 160, it talks about the triggers. Small adjustments are triggers that create new habits. And Mark Twain said, a habit cannot be, and I'm going to put an old habit, cannot be tossed out of the window. It must be coaxed down the stairs one step at a time. But you do that by putting the new habit in place. And we get to, again, not take things as failures, but as data points. Okay, here's the place I had that. Well, what else could I do instead? What did I used to think about when that happened? And so now what can I think that really is true? Because it's a truth. You could choose the positive, you could choose the negative of it. The beauty is we get to choose the way that takes us into a new life.
Absolutely.
And I'm really appreciating this.
So in that key component on what you look at, Justin, I'm adding you to the list here. That key component of what you choose to look at. You can choose to look for the good, choose to look for the bad. That's your choice. Which one is going to serve you? And I really want to go back, since Jeanette brought it in, this trigger piece, because a trigger is just changing something, breaking the pattern. So he talked in the content about when he's working with a baseball player on their batting, their swing. As he watches them, when they come up to the plate, if it's their trigger to tap once on the plate before they set up, well, he's going to have them tap 3 times. Something different to break the pattern. So for many of you, when you go to lead gen, maybe you're sitting down for lead gen time and you're not having the conversations you want to have. It's not going as well as you want. Time to change the pattern. Standing up like I'm doing today. I'm standing because I'm also changing the triggers on my health, thanks to our wonderful Renegade Health group that was created by you guys. So this trigger piece isn't necessarily something significant. Look at what you're doing habitually and then choose before the action what you're going to do differently. If the actions aren't giving you the results you want, look what you do before the action and make the change there to start the process. And you're next up.
Yeah, I just want to say that is luscious. That is so delicious. That whole changing the habit before you begin the behavior is so, like, I feel that really deeply. I wanted to toss out that PTSD. I watched listened to a podcast recently about complex PTSD, which is ongoing situations that we're in that create those same habits and processes within our brain, and that our brain gets those same ingrained, indoctrinated pathways. And so just because you don't have something PTSD, like that, you think you might have something that is chronic PTSD or complex PTSD, or even just like a long-term relational thing that you're like, oh, I mean, Celeste, you and I, we got like the brother stuff where I'm like, oh, I've got that. Like, how do we like take that different action to have that different outcome, right? The trigger, the action, and then the prize. I thought that was great. So
Awesome. And great looking at it even long term. Heck, my wife could be having 26-year PTSD, right? We'll have to investigate that, her and I have a conversation about that. Celeste, what do you got, my dear?
Well, it was just brought to my attention this week that the guy who invented Pilates was actually someone who was an injured veteran, and how he got on his new road to his new identity was he needed to get himself into like a new place in his mind to work out his body, his new body, so that he wasn't going to become a vegetable. And I feel like there's some things that are so traumatic in our lives, we get to choose which path are we going to go on. Are we going to believe our past story of who we thought we were? Or are we going to stop and say, wait a minute, I want this. I want to go in this direction. And I know that, you know, the story of Pilates is actually an interesting one, but more importantly, it's similar. The analogy is, this is a moment someone took control of their lives. And we have the same choice right now in our business. We can choose what we want. Every day, the standards we create will be the standards that will get us to our goals. And our standards have to be a daily standard. What's your standard? I love this book because of that. It's changing me, by the way. I just share that with you. I have used goals and I've missed my goals so long. I'm like sick of myself because I wasn't doing what I said I wanted. And guess what? I'm done. I'm like sick of myself. Sorry about that, you guys. But like, I really want to make this change. So I'm making it.
And just so you know, Celeste, there's a room full of people who have already seen significant changes over the last 6 months. Just the change of no longer talking about the regrets and what you could have done and should have done, because that used to be a pattern, and focusing on what you're going to do. And damn it, the change happens now. And that is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful energy. Carrie, you're up, and then Justin.
Okay, so am I really loud? Sorry. On page 155. So it says, forget inspiration. A habit is more dependable. Habits will sustain you, whether you're inspired or not. So I found that pretty insightful, because we're all learning to, have make standards and habits. So the habit, even though we don't want to, like, right? It's hard. It's like, we already do this. This is so much easier. I don't want to make you know what I mean? Resistance. So even though we have that resistance, know that it will be the positive to changing you later. So, because when your inspiration or your motivation, like mine is currently, that habit keeps you there, which is true, because the prospecting has become a habit now. It's not something I think about. It's what I'm doing. So maybe I hated the idea, but now it's my habit and it keeps me going.
So let's dig a little deeper on that and have a little fun and take it to the next level. Because you said it's not work now, it's just what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And what is it really? It's not just what you're doing, it's
motivation.
Who you are.
Thank you, Alicia. She went to be, do, have. Be is what matters most. And it really is who you are, Carrie. You are a prospector. I don't read every day. I'm a reader.
Mm-hmm.
You are a lead generator. Ryan is an inspirer. So many labels that we can now embrace and put on ourselves. So, Justin, I'm going to come to you, brother.
So Jeanette brought up that Mark Twain quote that I was going to bring up. So I'm going to throw out the Benjamin Franklin quote. Your net worth to the world is usually determined by what remains after your bad habits are subtracted from your good ones. I'm going to take that, I'm going to apply it to this whole piece of being. I think, at least for me, I've looked at my calendar as I've been growing into keeping and getting better and better with the calendar of what I could put in. And in this reading, like the past week, I'm starting to look at what things do I need to remove from my calendar? What things can I afford to let go of to make space for these positive things? Think of it kind of like a ratchet, not rat shit, but like a ratchet, not like the modern dictionary definition of a ratchet, but like the tool or a ratchet clause in commercial real estate. That building on these little habits, and I'm going to kind of dig in the dirt here. I think this is kind of what Russ was leaning toward with the prize. I think it's really easy to set big goals, like set these huge goals, and I'm going to be proud of myself when I'm having 20 conversations a day, or 100 a week, or 20 pounds, or $100,000, or like whatever big is on your thermostat. And I think that the prize piece is so important that when you have these smaller wins, like it's just something that you do now. And now you can use that and you can just ratchet it up. You can take that success that, I passed my, exam to get my license, or I have my first appointment, or I have my first contract, my first closing, my first pound, my first, check, whatever it is. But to really celebrate those small wins, to get that dopamine hit, to anchor them in and use them as a stepping off place, a leaping off place to get to the next win.
So that is exactly what I wanted to end with now, Justin, is that prize piece. So thank you for bringing that in, because I want you guys, and it's against our historical programming. Oh, you don't deserve anything. You should just do the work. You shouldn't be patting yourself on the back. And I'm telling you to do that on a high level so you get the psychological hit. We've got to break that historical pattern, that historical training that hasn't served us. So literally, if you haven't lead genned before, if you're not good about doing it every single day, then today you have one conversation, freaking celebrate it. Give yourself a hit of dopamine that, damn it, I did that. And then tomorrow it's 2. And the next day it's 3. And then maybe as it goes now, we're going to set an appointment every single day. And when you set one, you give yourself that prize, whatever it is. I don't care. By the way, you can work this in partnership with others and have them give you the prize. Always a great tool as well.